Hello and welcome to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Scott Mailig at Sports 25 to Life. And of course, we're talking about the huge slate on Tuesday as always. And unlike last night and, well, pretty much every Monday, there's some good pitchers on the mound tonight. So Jose Fernandez finally priced like a good pitcher. He was, when he come back from injury, was nice and cheap, but $12,700, getting to be pretty expensive up there in the elite category. But he is coming off an 11 strikeout game at Arizona. Now we get to Washington, team that's pretty much Bryce Harper and everyone else. So for me, he's my top option. You've got to like David Price as well, $12,800. I'm really not going to force both these guys into a lineup, outside of maybe like a GPP lineup. But I think if you're paying up for one guy, I think that Fernandez is the guy you want.
Yeah, it does make it tough. I actually still prefer Price, but I can't really argue with you preferring Fernandez. I mean, they're both great plays, I think. I prefer Price, at least in cash games, for the pretty solid innings pitched. I think he's averaging 7 2/3 over his last 6 starts, which is really good. And Fernandez has been a little bit shorter. He's obviously on a little bit more of a pitch count than Price. Yeah. Throws a few more pitches per inning in general. So that's probably why I would lean Price in cash games. I do prefer Fernandez in GPPs, though. I think he's definitely the better play there just because of the strikeout upside. I like both of them. Like you said, really, really tough to fit both in one lineup. So I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to be playing one or the other. I'll probably mix and match both of them quite a bit. I like them both a ton. There's not anyone else on this slate that I really love. My third favorite pitcher on the slate is probably Syndergaard against San Diego. He's another guy, decent strikeout upside, a little bit of concern with innings pitched. He hasn't been great lately, but, I mean, there's a chance San Diego has traded 3 of its players by tonight's game. And
that's a good point.
He could be facing a really depleted lineup that already wasn't that good. So if like Upton and Jed Gorko are out of there already, like, I mean, you have to like that matchup a ton.
Yeah, I mean, that's already a team that, at least as of yesterday, they were the worst offense in the last 30 days in all of baseball. So you take a bat like Upton out of there, I mean, you can only imagine how terrible they might be. So
exactly.
I'm with you there. I mean, he's in a great spot. There's a couple middling options that seem like they're okay. As secondary cash game options, Sasaki Iwakuma gets a fairly tough matchup. Struggled when he first came back, struggled earlier this season, but he's been pretty good over his last couple of games. Against some tough teams too, at Detroit, at New York, against the Angels. So I think he's a fine option at 8,300 as well. And if you need to dig a little bit deeper, which you probably will, if you want to get a decent lineup around Price or Fernandez, then Brett Anderson did leave his last start with an injury, but $6,700. He's not a guy with a lot of big upside, but Oakland is a terrible offense against left-handed pitching. On the season, they're ranked, I believe, I've got it right here actually. They are 20th in the league against left-handed pitchers. It's 124 ISO. They only strike out 17% of the time, but you're not chasing strikeouts here. You're looking for the win, and he's a pretty big favorite as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's a solid play, too. Another guy I like, after I liked Wood yesterday, I like Tehran today against Baltimore. I like taking pitchers and GPPs against Baltimore, especially when they're priced decently. They strike out a lot. I don't expect them to be a favorite, but as a GPP play, I don't mind it. Another guy that has some strikeout upside tonight, CJ Wilson against Houston, I think is decent, but they have a couple of guys that really crush lefties, which makes that a tough matchup for him. Leaves him definitely more as a GPP play. A secondary cash game play for me, I think Wade Miley is a fine option against the White Sox struggling offense. I don't love him. I'm not a big fan of playing Wade Miley. He's not a big strike guy. He hasn't been thrown really deep into games, but he's a guy that can give you a quality 6-inning start. And sometimes that's fine for cash games, especially if you're going to spend up on a guy like Price or Fernandez. I think he makes a decent second option.
Yeah, and that's an absolutely pathetic White Sox offense against lefties. Yeah. 58 WRC plus, 259 WOBA. I mean, they're still the worst in the league, and it isn't close. So
yeah, it's not even remotely close.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I don't like Wade Miley, but you like anyone who throws with their left arm against the White Sox. So I think he's a good option. Yeah. Outside of that, really nobody that kind of jumps off the page. More GPP plays. You got guys like James Shields against the Mets you can consider in GPP. Certainly don't trust him in cash games.
It's another guy that might get traded from the Padres, too.
Yeah. So keep your eyes on these things. We saw Shane Victorino, even last night, was originally in the lineup and then got traded and pulled out of the lineup. So even when you see lineups, you better be paying attention up till lineup lock. Or at least player lock since it's DraftKings. So take advantage of that because this is going to be one of the days, the next week, probably going to be the time where you really want to pay attention to that, especially. All right, catcher options tonight. There's quite a few interesting ones. Nobody that I absolutely love. Once again, you've got guys like Buster Posey who are going against a weak pitcher, Wiley Peralta, but he's much better against righties than lefties, so he's a GPP option. Matt Wieters is still way too cheap, $2,600 if he's in the lineup back-to-back days. So monitor that, but I mean he's just too good of a hitter for that cheap a price. So if he's in the lineup, it doesn't matter to me. Left hand, right hand, I'm still going to play him at $2,600 because you want at least one of these top two pitchers tonight.
Yeah, definitely. If you're not too worried about money, Posey I think is the top option by quite a bit again. Russell Martin is probably my favorite GPP play against the lefty and Morgan. I like basically all of the Toronto righties in that game. I think they're going to be a really popular stack. Outside of that, not a ton else I like. You mentioned Weed. I think he's my top play also. Maybe AJ Pierzynski again. I've been liking him when he's floating around that 3,000 mark on DraftKings. Against Jimenez. Maybe Alex Avila, but he hasn't been hitting really well lately despite hitting in a better spot in the lineup. I think he's been fifth against most of the righties lately, which has been a pretty decent spot for him after a couple of the Tigers' better hitters. So he's an option also. I'd probably stick to Posey and Wieters, though, for the most part. Assuming Wieters is in the lineup, I have a really hard time passing him up at that price.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Josh Fegley's another guy. He hits lefties really hard. If Brett Anderson comes back and isn't himself, not 100%, I mean, obviously, you got to like him in tournaments as well. All right, first base options. I mentioned Wiley Peralta, whatever. I always say his name wrong. I always like making fun of the guy. He's so bad against left-handed batters. So if you want a cheaper first base option, I don't mind Brandon Belt at $3,900 against him. Other options, you get Mark Teixeira, obviously switch hitter in Texas. Big total there once again. And then Freddie Freeman was cheap last night. He's not cheap today, but you certainly are considering him because he's obviously healthy. I mean, he had that one rehab game and hit a homer in that. Ubaldo Jimenez, he's an okay pitcher, but a guy like Freeman has the advantage more often than not in that.
Yeah, and Baltimore has a great park factor, home run park factor for lefties also. So that is just even more added bonus. That's just the reason you can go back to Chris Davis also as a decent first base, third base option in GPPs. Jose Abreu, we mentioned how bad the White Sox have been against lefties. Abreu's the one guy that is actually a better hitter against lefties. He's just been kind of boring this season, but at his price against a lefty, I don't mind him, especially at Boston where he's got that short porch in left field with the monster. I think that's a pretty good setup for him. But I don't feel great about the rest of the lineup around him, which kind of caps his upside for me. So it makes it a little tough gameplay for me at this point just because of how few runs the White Sox have been scoring lately. Yeah. Edwin Encarnacion, I'll mention the Toronto guy. He's a fantastic cash game and GPP play, in my opinion. If you're looking a little bit cheaper, there's not a ton else I like. I mentioned Chris Davis already. Pedro Alvarez is a fine GPP play. I'd pay up at first base today, though. There's so many good options.
Yeah, and Encarnacion against the lefty at that price is great, especially when you see how much the other Toronto bats are against lefties. So you're going to want to get a piece of this, and that's probably the most affordable guy with upside in this matchup. So second base options, Jason Kipnis, your most expensive. He gets Chris Young. It's a fine matchup for him, but $5,000 for him is pretty pricey, especially on this slate. Robbie Cano gets a righty, making his second major league start. Zach Godley was actually very good in his first start. And then other guys, Rougned Odor gets Chris Capuano, but you just don't love the matchup a ton, although Capuano's been terrible against lefties. So, I mean, you're certainly considering it. He's getting that price increase up to $4,300. So
yeah, he hasn't been very good against anyone, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, it's hard not to like Texas. I think I'd be okay using Odor in a mini Texas stack or something like that. I don't know if I want to play him as a one-off guy at his price in a lefty-lefty matchup, though. Especially with – I love Jose Altuve again tonight. If you're not playing C.J. Wilson, which, like I mentioned, I don't think I will be a ton. I'll probably mix him in a little bit. But Altuve's just killed lefty. He's just racking up stolen bases again right now. He's probably my favorite option overall. Slightly cheaper guy, Neil Walker, I think is going to be in play for me in cash games if he's sitting second against Pelfrey today. Walker's been a little bit better from the left side of the plate lately. He's a solid one for me. Another guy similar to that, Ben Zobrist is a guy I'm going to mention as usual. Facing a lefty, he has a little bit more power from the right side, even though his average is down a little bit. Probably more of a GPP play in this one, but with at second base.
Yeah, and Colton Wong also 3,700. Mike Leake's had big struggles with lefties. It actually hasn't been too bad against them recently. Wob on the season down to 325, but definitely a guy that you're still considering. And then if you want your GPP option, Logan Forsythe continues to destroy left-handed pitching, so $3,200. If you're not playing David Price, I mean he's a fine GPP option there.
Yeah.
All right, third base options. Alex Rodriguez just continues to rake, so you're looking at him, of course, against Martin Perez. And then Todd Frazier gets a lefty. Jaime Garcia, who's pitched well this season, but Frazier, I'll play him in tournaments against any lefty in the world, outside of maybe Clayton Kershaw or Chris Sale. But either way, Garcia is certainly not on that level. And then once again, Kyle Seager gets the righty at home. Finally looking more like the Kyle Seager that we saw last year. So if you're paying up, those are mostly the guys that I'm looking at here.
Yeah, I mean, I like Donaldson against the lefty also. Yeah. You mentioned Alex Rodriguez already. Frazier against the lefty. Brian, Maikel Franco against the lefty. Beltre against the lefty. There's a lot of good third base options today. Honestly, if I had 5 utility spots, they'd probably all be third basemen on this slate. It's just a stacked position. It's probably going to make or break a lot of cash games and GPPs because it's just a really diverse offering, and really none of these guys stands out a ton to me. I guess maybe A-Rod is the hottest, but Frazier, Donaldson have just crushed lefties this year. Chris Bryant's a great play, especially at a reduced price. If you're looking for a cheaper guy, I mentioned Chris Davis, Pedro Alvarez, the GPP options. Not too much else. I'm not going to go cheap at third base today, I don't think. There's just too much at the top to pass up on all those guys to save a little bit of money. I'm going to go cheap elsewhere, I think.
Yeah, you can consider a guy like Danny Valencia, who does really well, but at $3,800, you can play him in the outfield too. I don't know why you'd use your third base spot on a guy without much upside,
Agreed.
So get him in the outfield. Shortstop options, you got Carlos Correa, who continues to kill lefties. Again, C.J. Wilson is going to be your top healthy option, at least price-wise, $4,700. You got to like him. Jose Reyes, get him as part of your Blue Jays stack there, $4,500. He makes for a great cash game play. He's an expensive cash game play, but he just continues to get it done. Yeah. Hanley Ramirez, $3,900. You can play him at shortstop. You don't love the matchup against Samardzija, but for a guy of his talent, as good of a hitter as he is, that's just way too cheap for a price tag, if you ask me.
Yeah, and Samardzija is another guy that could be on the move today. So if he's out of there, Hanley could be a really good shortstop option. Although Hanley Ramirez I believe, hit Samardzija really well in his career, which is a pretty big sample size, if I recall. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. I just remember somebody saying that earlier.
Yeah.
But anytime you can play him at shortstop like you can on DraftKings, he's really hard to argue with because of how much offensive upside he has compared to some of these other guys. I can list the rest of the guys I have on my list here. Brandon Crawford is probably the other highest upside guy I have against your boy Peralta. Outside of that, Cesar Hernandez against the lefty is fine. If he's hitting second in the order in Toronto, I like that quite a bit. You mentioned a couple of the Seattle lefties already in Seager. I like Brad Miller a decent amount if he's sitting near the top of the order. I'm not super excited about it because he's just been not very good this year, but at his price, I don't mind him against a pretty weak righty and Godley.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all either. And then I'll mention him for you in case you forgot. Tyler Saladino, $2,400.
Oh yeah, I promised I would keep mentioning him until he got above 2,500, and I didn't. You're right.
I wasn't going to let you forget him. He's still 2,400.
All right,
so you gotta
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I got your back there. Looking at the outfield, of course you love Jose Bautista. You don't love his price. He's $5,600, but he's in a great spot. One guy I like in the middle, I'll just skip down to him. Marlon Byrd continues to crush lefties, so $3,600. It's possible he gets traded too. The Reds may be cleaning house, so that seems to be a theme of the day, and it will be for the next few days. So keep your eye on that. But $3,600 makes him, I think, a fine cash game play or tournament option. Then you get Michael Brantley, who's been hitting pretty well at $4,800. He gets the fly ball pitcher and Chris Young. That offense as a whole has not been very good recently, but Chris Young's just still not a guy. He just defies all logic, and he's just not a guy that I have any faith in. So I like the Cleveland Bats a little bit tonight as well.
Yeah, definitely. One guy that's been heating up a bit, I think he's reached base in, I want to say, 14 straight games now, Gregory Polanco. Has a decent matchup against Mike Pelfrey in Minnesota. Still hasn't jumped up too much in price yet. I think he's a guy that I'm going to be mixing into my cash game lineups, assuming he's at the top of the order still, which, considering how many games in a row he's reached base in, I'd be pretty surprised if they bumped him back down anytime soon. If we're looking for a little bit more value, there's not a ton of value today that I'm like really excited about. I mean, you have your like normal value guys, like if they're in the lineup, like Tyler Moore, Shane Robinson. I mean, there's a couple guys out here, but Michael Conforto for the Mets against Shields, or hopefully not Shields, he would be much more useful against. No one I'm super excited about cheap-wise, though, in the outfield.
Yeah, there's nobody that really stands out. I mean, Melky Cabrera now has RBIs in 7 straight games, so at $3,900, I mean, it doesn't matter how it's happening, he's getting it done. So a guy that you feel kind of queasy about playing your cash games, but, I mean, looking at his recent production, it's really hard to ignore him at that price. So if you've got to have a cheap guy, I think he's fine as well. And then you get Gerardo Parra at $3,400, assuming he's not traded. He's a really cheap option against Matt Cain as well.
Yeah, another cheap-ish Toronto outfield option, Chris Colabello against a lefty and Morgan is probably a fine play too. Gerardo Parra against Cain. Cain really hasn't been the same pitcher lately. I think if you need a couple cash game options, these Milwaukee outfielders are pretty solid, although I don't love Gomez and Braun at their prices, but I think they should be pretty good in this game against Cain. I don't like Preston Tucker today facing a lefty. No. There's just not a ton in the middle that I like, or the bottom. I mean, there's just like a lot of top options on the board today, which makes it really tough. So I'm probably going to end up using some guys like Valencia in the outfield. I don't know. There's a lot of cash game plays in the value and mid-range spots, but there aren't a lot of like those platoon plays in the outfield today where, like, I've been playing a ton of Johnny Gomes lately against lefties, and there just aren't a lot of plays like that today.
Yeah, I will throw out one. Charlie Morton has been terrible against lefties. Aaron Hicks at $3,400.
That's a good one.
If he's batting second, he's been batting second quite a bit against righties. He's got a little bit of power. I think he's got like a 170 ISO. And, if you want to pick on Morton, you definitely know that Minnesota much better offensively at home than on the road. So.
Yeah, Eddie Rosario is another guy like that you can pick on Morton with. If he's hitting like 5-6 in the lineup, I don't mind him. He's pretty close to the minimum. So he's a guy I'd look at also. But like I said, a lot of these guys feel like cash game plays to me that you're going to use to get like Fernandez or Price in your lineup with like Posey or something like that. If you're looking at GPPs, you're probably better off going a little bit more even and paying up for some of these outfielders to go with your like third baseman and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And with that, that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.